My name is Elena Kovac. I'm 41 years old, and I live in Budapest, Hungary. If you saw me walking through Heroes Square, a stack of psychology books in my arms, you'd probably think I was just another busy woman, juggling daily routines, bills, and dreams postponed for someday. Maybe you can relate. Life rushing by, family expectations, and that quiet fear of not really living as fully as you wish. My days were filled with the same things as millions of people. Waking up early, coffee by the frosty kitchen window, heading to work as a therapist, trying to help others find meaning while quietly questioning my own. My husband, Gabor, is a university professor, and together we raise our 10-year-old son, Matthias. Every week was a blur of work, school projects, and those rare, cherished moments when we were truly together as a family. Yet underneath the normalcy, there was a quiet emptiness. Not sadness, not depression, just a persistent question that whispered every night, is there more to life than this endless cycle? If everything ended tomorrow, what would really matter? I wasn't religious, but sometimes before falling asleep, I would silently ask, if there's a God out there, can you hear my doubt? Will you show me the truth? The day of the accident, moments before sudden death. It was a rainy Thursday, one of those days that blurs into all the others. I remember the smell of wet pavement and the sound of Matthias laughing in the back seat as we drove home from his violin lesson. I was thinking about tomorrow's appointments, mentally juggling emails and grocery lists, barely noticing the present moment. Isn't that how most of us live? Distracted, always thinking ahead, rarely noticing what's right in front of us. If you've ever felt life speeding by, or caught yourself wondering when you last truly felt alive, write, "I feel this," in the comments right now. Sometimes just admitting it out loud is the first step to waking up. As I stopped at a red light, I glanced at my son's face in the rearview mirror. Innocent, trusting, completely unaware of the invisible threads that tie us all to fate. That's when everything changed. In a split second, there was a screech of tires, a blinding flash of headlights, and a shattering impact that swallowed all sound. I remember the sickening weightlessness, the world spinning, glass and metal folding around us, and then, nothing. No pain, no fear. Just a sudden, absolute silence, as if I'd been pulled out of time itself. Have you ever wondered what your very last thought would be if everything ended in an instant? Share it in the comments. Sometimes, your words are the ones someone else needs to read. Crossing over, the sensations of death. I always thought that if death came suddenly, it would be terrifying. A blur of pain and panic, your whole life flashing before your eyes in a single, blinding second. But when that moment actually arrived for me, it was different. It was almost gentle. At first, there was a kind of floating sensation, as if gravity itself had forgotten me. The pain from the crash faded into a distant echo, as though it belonged to someone else far away. I became aware of a weightlessness that no words can really describe. My body, my physical form, was somewhere below, but my consciousness was rising above it. The chaos on the street, the flashing lights, the rain hitting the shattered windshield, the muffled shouts of strangers, seemed to fade into the background, replaced by an overwhelming sense of calm. There was a subtle glow around everything, as if the world itself was wrapped in a soft golden mist. In those first seconds, I felt a profound peace, deeper than any sleep I'd ever known. My fears, my worries, even my memories of that day, drifted away like leaves in a gentle stream. Time lost all meaning. I wasn't counting seconds or minutes. I was just existing. Then I began to notice other things. The air felt alive, charged with a strange warmth and energy. I realized I could sense, not with my eyes, but with something deeper, the emotions and thoughts of people nearby. I could feel the panic of the onlookers, the desperate hope of a woman kneeling in prayer beside the wreck, and the absolute terror of a child's scream piercing the air. All of it flowed through me and around me, yet I wasn't overwhelmed. It was as if I'd become part of a much bigger current, a vast river of life and feeling. There was one last thread pulling me toward my old life. Matthias. I saw him, motionless in the back seat, his small hand still clutching his violin case. A surge of love, pure, unconditional, brighter than anything I'd ever felt, pulled me back toward him. I wanted to scream, to reach out, to hold him, but I couldn't move. I realized then that I was no longer tied to my body, that I was watching a world I could no longer touch. It's a strange thing to realize you're dead, and yet feel more alive than ever. Have you ever wondered what you would see or feel if you were suddenly outside your own body? Would you try to go back? Would you feel regret, or peace, or something else entirely? Please, share your thoughts in the comments. Your experience might comfort someone who's afraid of death or struggling with loss. In that suspended moment between worlds, I knew something profound was about to happen, something I would never forget. Awakening out of the body, peace, confusion, and a new reality. The world I knew was fading away, like a radio signal slowly losing strength, but what replaced it was not darkness. It was something far more beautiful and inexplicable. At first, I hovered above the crash scene. I could see the twisted metal, the flashing red and blue lights, the steam rising from the rain-soaked pavement. I saw my own body, slumped and still, and for a fleeting second, a surge of panic welled up. That can't be me. I'm right here. I'm alive. But as that thought passed, a tremendous sense of peace washed over me. It was as if every ounce of pain, worry, and fear I'd carried for years simply melted away. My mind became clearer, sharper, free from the constant static of earthly thoughts. Every sensation, every color, every sound, every feeling seemed magnified and purified. I drifted higher. Time no longer made sense. Everything was happening at once. I saw faces of strangers and loved ones, moments from my childhood, scenes from my adult life, snapshots blending together in a tapestry of meaning. I felt a deep connection to everyone, even people I'd never met. I could sense their stories, their joys, and their heartbreaks, as if the barriers between us no longer existed. There was no loneliness here, only belonging. Suddenly, I became aware of a presence, not a person in the way we understand, but a vast, loving intelligence, warmer than any sun. It seemed to fill the space around me, inviting me to let go, to trust. The presence communicated not with words, but with understanding, pouring reassurance into my very soul. You are safe. You are loved. Nothing is ever truly lost. As I surrendered to that embrace, I felt myself drawn further, beyond the city, beyond the sky, into a space filled with radiant light. The colors were unlike anything on Earth, alive, shimmering, speaking to me in ways I cannot fully describe. I sensed the memories and emotions of countless souls all around me, woven together in a harmony that made perfect sense in that place. Yet a part of me hesitated. I thought of Matthias, of Gabor, of everyone I would leave behind. Would they understand? Would they forgive me for letting go? I wanted to reach out to them, to reassure them, to tell them not to be afraid. In that moment, I realized how much love endures, across any distance, even between life and death. Have you ever had a dream, a near-death experience, or even a moment where you felt completely at peace and connected to something greater? Did it change the way you see life or death? Please share your story in the comments. Your words might be the light someone else needs today. In that place between worlds, I finally understood. Our souls are never truly alone. There is always more waiting for us. More love, more understanding, more life, if only we dare to see it. The encounter with the spiritual entity. As I drifted deeper into that realm of light, the sense of being watched, no, not watched, but truly known, grew stronger. It was as if every thought, every memory, every secret longing of my soul was being gently held and understood by a presence far greater than myself. At first, I saw only light, golden, pure, with a warmth that radiated love through every part of me. Then, within that brilliance, a figure began to take shape. It wasn't like seeing with my physical eyes. It was more like my soul recognized this being long before my mind could comprehend it. The presence was both infinitely familiar and awe-inspiring. There was kindness in the way it drew near, and an authority so gentle it didn't have to announce itself. Some call this being Jesus. Others say angel, guide, or simply love. For me, the name mattered less than the overwhelming truth I felt. I was in the company of a presence who had loved me through every moment of my life, even the ones I tried to hide from myself. The entity communicated not with words, but with a deep, resonant knowing. In that exchange, I saw flashes of my life, times when I'd been kind to a stranger, when I'd held back forgiveness, when I'd chosen comfort over courage. There was no judgment, only an invitation to understand the ripple of every choice. I felt everything as if it were happening now. My mother's tears the day I left home, my son's laughter echoing in a playground, the lonely man I once ignored in a cafe. All these moments lived within me, braided together by the golden thread of this being's love. And then came a question, not spoken, but imprinted into my soul. What have you done with the love you were given? The question wasn't meant to condemn, but to awaken. I felt an ache, a longing to have lived more boldly, to have chosen love over fear more often. Yet in that same moment, I was wrapped in forgiveness and encouragement. You are not alone. There is still time. Everything you have experienced has meaning. Suddenly, the light around the entity changed, and I saw visions, scenes unfolding faster than thought. A world trembling, cities cracking, oceans surging, people clinging to each other in fear and awe. The presence was showing me something urgent, something meant not just for me, but for all of us. Before I could ask why, the being turned to me, and I felt an immense responsibility settle on my spirit. You must remember, the presence urged, and you must share what you have seen. The message is not for you alone. Have you ever felt visited or guided by something beyond this world? Perhaps in a dream, a moment of crisis, or a time of profound peace? Did it give you a message or lesson? Please share your experience in the comments. Your story might help someone realize they are never truly alone. In that sacred presence, I understood. What I was about to witness would change not only my life, but perhaps the lives of many who would one day hear my story. The vision of the great earthquake, the world in collapse. Suddenly, the peaceful light began to tremble. I felt a shift, an urgency pulsing through the space, as if the very fabric of reality was tightening around me. The presence beside me became even more intense, and though I felt safe, I also knew something monumental was about to unfold. In an instant, I was transported, not walking, not flying, but being, to a vantage point high above the earth. I saw the blue curve of the planet spinning in the blackness of space. Below, cities twinkled like fields of diamonds. The presence stood with me, silent and unwavering, inviting me to watch. Then, a deep vibration shook everything. At first, it was subtle, a low hum, a trembling in the bones of the world, but it grew, spreading from one side of the globe to the other. I saw continents shifting, mountains groaning, and oceans swirling with a force that was at once terrifying and awe-inspiring. Cities I recognized, New York, Los Angeles, Tokyo, Paris, Sao Paulo, Sydney, shuddered under the pressure. Skyscrapers wavered and collapsed in waves of dust and glass. Bridges snapped like twigs. Roads cracked open, swallowing cars and homes. The seas, as if summoned by an ancient call, surged inward, flooding coastlines and carrying away everything in their path. Islands vanished. Entire neighborhoods disappeared beneath the water. But the most shocking thing wasn't just the destruction. It was the cry that rose from humanity. I heard millions of voices, a symphony of fear and longing. Some wept for their loved ones. Others fell to their knees, praying, begging for mercy. Many shouted in anger or denial, refusing to believe what was happening. But a great many, perhaps more than I expected, looked up, eyes wide open, searching for something or someone greater than themselves. It was as if, in that moment, the shaking of the earth had ripped open the shaking of human hearts. I saw people reconciling in the ruins, embracing old enemies, reaching out to strangers with trembling hands. I saw mothers holding their children close, fathers weeping openly, neighbors forming circles of comfort and prayer in the rubble. Some felt regret for things left unsaid. Others found the courage to forgive and ask forgiveness at the very end. Yet there was also a darkness. Some hardened their hearts, clinging to hatred or blame, refusing to let go of old wounds even as the world around them fell apart. I saw those who exploited the chaos, who turned away from the suffering of others, who built walls, literal and figurative, to shut out the pain. Amidst all this, I understood. This was not just a physical earthquake, but a spiritual one. The real shaking was happening inside, in the deepest chambers of every soul. The world was being called to awaken, to choose between fear and love, between division and unity. The vision showed me scenes of hope amid the ruins, people of every nation and language gathering, hand in hand, refusing to let hatred win. Small acts of kindness, someone sharing water, a stranger's comforting touch, became the seeds of something new. I saw communities rising from the ashes, not just rebuilding homes, but rebuilding hearts and lives with a strength that could only come from above. The presence beside me pressed this lesson into my heart. What shakes the earth also shakes the soul. Will you open your heart, or will you close it? If you knew the world could change in an instant, if you saw your city fall, your routine shatter, what would you do differently? Who would you reach out to? What regrets would you let go of? Please write your answers in the comments. Your reflections might inspire someone else to take action, to reconcile, or simply to cherish their loved ones while there is still time. As the vision faded, I was left trembling, not with fear, but with an urgent hope. The collapse of the world was not the end. It was an invitation to rebuild, not just cities and streets, but the foundation of our very souls. The inner tremor, the earthquake within hearts. As the vision of collapsing cities and rising waters dissolved around me, I found myself standing, not in the chaos, but in a space of utter stillness. Here, it was as if all the noise of the world had faded away. I could no longer hear the cries, the sirens, or even the trembling earth. Instead, there was only the sound of my own soul, echoing with questions I had long ignored. It was in this silence that I began to sense the real meaning behind what I had just witnessed. The physical earthquake was devastating, yes, but the true shaking was happening within. I felt it as a deep vibration, starting in my chest and radiating outward. It was the quake of realization, the aftershock of seeing life for what it truly is, fragile, precious, and always, always temporary. In this space, I was shown not just the world's pain, but my own. Memories I'd buried resurfaced. Old wounds, mistakes, times I'd chosen safety over honesty, comfort over compassion. I saw my impatience with Gabor, the moments I dismissed Matyas's questions because I was too busy, the friends I lost touch with over petty disagreements. Each memory was a small tremor, a reminder of the cracks that had quietly formed in the foundation of my own heart. But I wasn't alone. All around me, I sensed the presence of others. Millions, perhaps billions, of souls undergoing the same awakening. I saw people from every walk of life, every culture, every generation, suddenly stopping in their tracks, as if some invisible force had called them to attention. Each person's inner world was being shaken, examined, tested. Some clung desperately to old beliefs, refusing to admit that change was needed. Others wept with relief, grateful for the chance to begin again. I watched as the presence that had guided me earlier walked among them, offering a gentle touch, a wordless invitation to let go. It was as if this spiritual being was saying, "You do not have to carry the weight of your regrets. Let the old ways fall. What you build next will matter far more than what has collapsed." I saw forgiveness flowing like water, estranged siblings embracing, marriages rekindling, friendships healed after years of silence. I saw people giving up grudges they'd nursed for decades, parents finally hearing their children's hearts, strangers coming together in acts of selfless love. There were tears, of course, grief for lost time, for words never spoken, for chances never taken. But those tears watered the ground for something new to grow. And yet, not everyone accepted the invitation. Some remained trapped in their bitterness, their fear, their need to control. They built walls around their pain, believing they were protecting themselves, not realizing that the walls kept out healing as well. In this vision, the message was clear. Every heart will be shaken, and every person will be given a choice. The old world may fall, but what rises from the rubble depends on us. I realized then that no one is truly immune to these inner quakes. They may not look as dramatic as collapsing buildings or raging seas, but they change us just as profoundly. Sometimes it takes losing what we thought was unshakable to finally find what matters most. If you've ever felt your own heart quake, maybe during a crisis, a loss, or even a sudden insight, how did it change you? Did you resist, or did you allow yourself to grow? Please share your story in the comments. Your courage to be honest might help someone else who is trembling right now. And remember, every crack can become a doorway to light, if we let it. The message received, a call for spiritual rebuilding. After witnessing the devastation, the shaking of the world, and the trembling of so many hearts, I was filled with a mix of grief and awe. The vision lingered, more real than anything I'd ever experienced on earth. The presence that had guided me stood with me once more, radiant with a patience that felt older than time itself. And then, like a bell ringing clear through the silence, the message came, not as spoken words, but as a truth woven into the very fabric of my being. The collapse of what is temporary is not the end, but the beginning of what is eternal. Rebuild, not just your homes, your cities, your lives, but your spirits. The greatest danger is not in losing what you can touch, but in losing the courage to love, to hope, to forgive. I felt that message sinking deep into me, as if every cell in my soul was being rewritten. I was shown images of the world after the quake, streets flooded not just with water, but with people carrying candles, flowers, broken photographs. I saw men and women kneeling in the ruins, not cursing the loss, but searching for meaning, for hope, for each other. There was a great silence after the shaking, and in that silence, a seed of something new began to grow. I saw children laughing in places where buildings once stood, their joy untouched by memories of destruction. I saw communities forming in open fields, people cooking together over makeshift fires, telling stories, singing songs of survival and rebirth. And most of all, I saw hearts opening. People who once walked with heads down now looked each other in the eyes, really seeing, not just the stranger, but the brother, the sister, the neighbor in every face. I saw men weeping with gratitude, women forgiving old betrayals, families embracing after decades apart. I witnessed a new kind of wealth, not in things, but in connection. The presence beside me spoke again, not with sound, but with a certainty that left no room for doubt. Tell them, the rebuilding that matters most is not with bricks and steel, but with kindness, honesty, and compassion. If you lose your house but find your heart, you have gained everything. As these words settled inside me, I was shown one final scene. A world rebuilt, not as it was before, but stronger, softer, more just. There were still scars, and not every loss could be replaced. But in the faces of those who survived, there was a new light, a light that comes only from having passed through darkness together. And then I understood. My journey was not just about what I had seen, but about what I must do. This message was not for me alone. It was for everyone who, in the aftermath of tragedy or the quiet despair of daily life, wonders if hope is still possible. In that moment, I felt both small and infinite, both humbled and empowered. The message pulsed in my spirit, alive and urgent. Rebuild, not just what you have lost, but who you are. The future depends on it. If you've ever survived something that shook your world, if you've ever had to rebuild yourself after loss, heartbreak, or disappointment, what gave you the strength to keep going? Who helped you, or what lesson did you learn? Please share your story or advice in the comments. Your words could be the encouragement someone desperately needs right now. And if you're in the middle of your own earthquake today, know this: you are not alone, and this can be your beginning, not your end. The return to the body, pain, transformation, and a mission awakened. Suddenly, the light began to recede, like the tide pulling back from the shore. I felt myself moving, not by my own will, but as if I were being gently carried backward through layers of existence. The vision, the earthquake, the broken world, the hope among ruins grew distant, but the message remained, burning in my soul. I resisted at first. After tasting such profound love, peace, and clarity, the thought of returning to my old life, with all its limitations and noise, was almost unbearable. My spirit yearned to stay in that realm, to dissolve into the embrace of the presence, to remain in the light where nothing was hidden and everything made sense. But the being's words echoed inside me. You must remember. You must share. There is still work for you to do. Then came the falling, the sensation of descending, of being pulled through a tunnel of rushing sound and fading colors. My senses dulled, the pain of memory returning like icy water, reality pressing in all around me. The next moment I gasped, my body convulsing with agony. I was in a hospital, tubes and wires everywhere, doctors and nurses shouting in Hungarian. I heard Gabor's voice, raw with tears and hope. My eyelids fluttered open, and through the blur, I saw Matthias's small hand in mine, alive, warm, trembling. But the pain was not just physical. The greatest suffering came from the distance between the world I had glimpsed and the one to which I had returned. At first, I could barely move, trapped in a body racked with injuries. Breathing hurt. Speaking was almost impossible. Nights were filled with confusion. Was what I'd seen real, or just a desperate dream? Was I chosen, or merely broken? The doctors said I was lucky to be alive. They didn't know about the new burden I carried. A message so vast, so urgent, it felt almost impossible to put into words. I watched as family and friends visited, trying to comfort me, not knowing that the woman they saw was no longer the woman who had left. I wept for everything I had lost, but also for everything I had gained. Perspective, humility, a sense of mission that would not let me rest. Recovery was slow and lonely. Many nights I lay awake, replaying the vision, terrified that it would fade. But it did not fade. If anything, it grew stronger. Each day, each sunrise, a reminder that I'd been sent back for a reason. I saw the world with new eyes. Every argument, every grudge, every wasted hour now seemed unbearably precious. I longed to hold my son and husband, not out of habit, but with the fierce, urgent gratitude of one who knows how fragile it all is. But sharing my experience was not easy. I feared being dismissed as delusional or emotionally unstable. Even my loved ones, with all their kindness, sometimes looked at me as if I had become a stranger. And in some ways I had. The person I was before died in that accident. What returned was a survivor with a mission, a burning need to wake others from their sleep, to warn, to encourage, to call forth something deeper. The urge to keep silent was strong. It would have been so much simpler to bury the vision, to smile and pretend, to move on as if nothing had changed, but I could not. Every day that I stayed silent, I felt the earthquake echo in my bones, the world crying out for healing and hope. And so I began, haltingly at first, to tell my story, to share the message I had been given, to invite others to look at their lives, not with fear, but with courage, not with shame, but with the wild hope that even in the rubble, new life can begin. And the more I shared, the more I discovered others, people who had their own earthquakes, their own moments of awakening. We became a quiet fellowship, survivors and dreamers, determined to rebuild not just what had been lost, but what had never truly existed before. A world based on love, on forgiveness, on courage to begin again. If you have ever survived something that changed you forever, if you've ever come back from the brink, or felt called to something bigger than yourself, how did you find the strength to keep going? Did you share your story, or did you hold it inside? Please write about it in the comments. Your honesty could be the spark that lights someone else's way out of darkness. And if you're struggling to return, to live with a mission after loss or trauma, know that you are not alone. Sometimes the greatest act of courage is simply to begin again. What would you do if you received this warning? As my body healed and the days turned into weeks and then months, the memory of that other world never faded. It wasn't just a vision. It became the foundation of everything I am now. Sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night, the weight of the message pulsing through me like a second heartbeat. What you saw is not a prophecy to be feared, but a call to be answered. Life did not return to normal. How could it? I found myself questioning everything. I noticed beauty in places I used to overlook, the laughter of a child in the grocery store, the way my husband's hand reached for mine in the dark, the kindness of a stranger holding the elevator door. But I also saw pain more clearly than before. I recognized the silent suffering in others, the father pretending to be strong for his family, the neighbor who lives alone, the cashier hiding her exhaustion behind a polite smile. Every moment was now infused with possibility. I tried to be more present with Matthias, listening to his stories even when they seemed endless. I spoke more gently to Gabor, letting go of old arguments and grudges. Sometimes I failed, slipping back into impatience or worry, but I no longer took those moments for granted. I apologized more. I forgave faster. I cherished every ordinary day, knowing now how quickly it could all be swept away. And I kept telling my story. At first, it was terrifying. There were people who rolled their eyes, who told me I'd imagined it, who questioned my sanity or my motives. But there were many more, so many, who listened, who thanked me, who wept because my experience echoed their own secret fears and hopes. I received letters from people who had lost loved ones, who had survived disasters, who had suffered in silence for years. They told me my story helped them feel less alone, that it gave them courage to keep rebuilding, to keep loving, even when the world seemed broken. The mission didn't end with my recovery. It grew. I began speaking at community centers, hospitals, even schools. I started writing, hoping my words could reach further than my voice ever could. Each time, I reminded people, the greatest earthquake is the one that shakes us awake inside. The world outside can collapse, but what matters is how we choose to rebuild within. Now, I ask you, everyone listening, wherever you are in the world, if you received this warning, this vision of a world shaken to its core, what would you do differently? Today, right now. Who would you forgive? What old wounds would you heal? What kindness would you finally offer? Or what risk would you finally take? Would you spend more time with your children? Call a parent? Say, I love you, while you still can? Would you stop waiting for the right moment to begin again? I invite you, truly, to pause for a moment. Think about the foundation of your life. If it shook, what would remain standing? What is unbreakable in you? And just as importantly, what needs to fall so something new can rise? Please, share your answers in the comments. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Your story, your hopes, your questions might be exactly what another soul needs to read today. Whether you've experienced your own earthquake or you're simply searching for meaning in the midst of life's ordinary storms, your voice matters. Together, our stories become the seeds of a new world, one rebuilt not just on survival, but on love, compassion, and hope. Before you go, I urge you, hold your loved ones a little closer, forgive a little faster, dream a little bigger. Let the shaking awaken you, not with fear, but with the certainty that you are part of something greater, something enduring, something that no earthquake can ever destroy. And if this message touched you, please consider subscribing to the channel, sharing this video with someone who needs it, and joining our community of seekers and survivors. Your presence, your words, and your light are needed more than ever. What would you do if you received this warning? Write it in the comments. Let's rebuild together.